So please welcome Ursula Romero, Managing Director of International Sports Broadcasting, to the stage. So ISB is a host broadcasting production company. Fantastic history. At the Olympics, a team from ISB produced the modern pentathlon, well, the shooting first, then the modern pentathlon, one after the other, so that was fun for them, while Ursula worked for Olympic Broadcast Services on quality control at the IBC in Paris. So as head, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
So as head of a large production company, how do you go about organising your team and working with such a big body as OBS, in preparation for an Olympics and Paralympics?
Well, it kind of depends, but in the case of the Olympics, it was very clear because they asked us to provide shooting and then modern pentathlon team. So really the important thing is to find the right people. And we have been working for the last 3 years with the Modern Pentathlon Federation as their host broadcaster. So we were lucky enough to have a great team together, but also knowing that shooting was there, we tried to sort of mix it up. And we are very lucky to have a great freelance database that we like to be very loyal to our freelancers. So that's really the most, it's not really that complicated except for saying, hey, we want to choose the right people for the right job. And with OBS just being down the road, we could have meetings with the coordinating producer, who's Helen Boroboca. Some of you might know her. But she's been really great, and we've known each other for 20 plus years now, so it was quite easy just to adjust, then of course you have to think about the camera positions and all of that and choose the right people again for the job. But then we also obviously had the initiative from OBS to include more women in the production, which is also kind of difficult because of course you want to include more women, but you also want to make sure you choose the right crew. So yeah, it was kind of it's more of a coordination. It's not really that complicated in that sense.
Okay, good. And then on those more gender equal crews that you put together, that was a big OBS initiative for this Olympics. And so how easy, though, was it for you to create those gender equal teams? Because there are a lot of freelance out there, but a lot. Do you normally kind of go for more women, or do you, just as a daily thing at ISB, do you try, as a woman working in the industry already, do you try and get more women into your crews?
Yes,
naturally.
Absolutely. We we are now 16 as full-time staff at ISB, sorry. And we are, actually the other day we were having a meeting and I counted the room and it was poor old David sitting with the rest of us. So it was quite cool. But we have now on staff full-time 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 women out of
brilliant
16 of us. So, but yeah, part of our modern pentathlon crew, there's usually pretty half and half. And we also wanted to make sure that we had 3, 4 camera women that have a lot of experience, so they're part of our normal crew anyway.
Yeah.
And the same with the vision mixer. She's part of our normal sort of favorite. So we really try to pick and choose, not just women, but also the best possible candidates. So
yes, yeah. Although a lot of companies, they'll say they want the best, and then they'll just end up with a crew full of men. But you're actively looking.
Yes, we are. We're trying to.
Good. And why is it important to create? It was OBS's initiative on this Olympics, but why is it important to create crews that are more gender equal? Does it actually add anything to the production or to the feeling behind the camera?
Well, I have to be honest, but it's quite interesting because last year we did the Para Athletics World Championships in Paris in preparation for the Paralympics, and we had a few situations where we had some of the women crew actually not getting along, and that's very interesting because there was a little bit of a cat fight situation in the truck.
Oh.
So we had some of the guys walking out and going, oops, I want to get out because there's a bit of a... And actually, these two same ladies just contacted me the other day saying that they wanted to prefer not to be on the same team because they didn't get along. So, you know, that's kind of... You have to do that, of course, with everyone. But yeah, it's interesting, you know, if you just go for... I think we need to be careful in general, and I'm looking at you guys because of the training. I think it's very important that women get trained well enough so they can also be confident enough to know what they're doing and not just putting people in positions just to fill in the crew. And I think there is a lot of very talented people out there, but maybe they haven't had the opportunity. So I think it's more of a personal, you know, part of my job, I think, is very important to speak to the crew, to understand what they want, what they like, what they don't like, and it's just to listen, because, you know, you may be able to find a diamond in the brute all of a sudden, and I think we talked about it. We hired a camera woman that I had personally never worked with, and her specialty was hard camera. But she came to the director and said, hey, I would really love to do handheld. And in the end, she turned out to be this amazing handheld operator running around at modern pentathlon, you know, super small, and I don't know how she did it, but she got amazing shots. So it's just a matter of giving an opportunity and actually, you know, really being honest and saying, hey, I can do this, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all about opportunity, I think.
Yeah. And speaking of opportunity, the shooting was the first Olympic sport your team produced out there, and they got the Turkish...
Yeah, the bang bang.
Yeah, very cool. And on those two sports, so how did your team work? You know, go first from the shooting, running around there, and then they had to move very quickly to the pentathlon, didn't they? Tell us about that.
Well, first of all, the shooting is obviously a very different sport than modern pentathlon, but we were 3 hours outside of Paris. So it was a really quick turnaround to go from Paris and then come to Versailles and set up the whole modern pentathlon, which is, I think these games is the second time around where they do it all in one venue. Before it had different venues and it was logistically quite complicated. But this time around they managed to put it all in one venue in the stadium. So it was it was difficult because between each discipline there's camera movements. So the crew was very, you know, challenged by having to do that. So it went from shooting, which was quite simple and straightforward, but you have to be very creative in shooting to make it fun and interesting, because it's quite, you know, unless you're a shooter, it's very difficult to understand what's happening.
Yeah. It's quite a tight venue as well.
It's a very small venue, and it unfortunately, they didn't do it any justice, look of the games wise, so we had to really try and shoot around all the grey walls and not very nice looking venue. And then we had the beautiful Versailles, which is stunning. So it made it very easy to make look good.
Yeah.
But the crew, we had to join with some other crews, and it was sort of a relief crew that came from another venue. So we had to, again, try to join different cultures and different languages and a new truck. And so it was very exciting, yeah.
Yeah. And how quick was the turnaround between the two?
1 day and a half.
Sweaty.
Yeah, very sweaty.
Yeah,
it was very sweaty indeed. Yeah.
And then, were there any particular challenges in that? You know, technical challenges or anything else from going from one to the other?
Yes. Well, it was at the shooting we had a virtual OB van sort of set up, which was a bit challenging because it was the first time that our crew had worked with such a setup.
Right. Yeah.
And there was some challenges there, but then when we moved to modern pentathlon, we went back to good old normal truck. But the truck was not quite set up for what we were trying to do with the modern pentathlon. It was a truck that had done equestrian. And with modern pentathlon, with so many disciplines and so many changeovers, it made it technically quite challenging to move from one setup to the other.
Right, yeah.
So it took the crew a little bit of time, especially in the EVS world, to get connected and networked, but at the end it worked out quite well.
Yeah.
So
didn't notice any glitches, so you were good.
As long as you didn't notice.
And then meanwhile, while your team was working on all this stuff and you're sitting there kind of keeping an eye on them as well, but you were actually working for Olympic Broadcasting Services. I'm looking at Will, who always corrects me on that. But yeah, so you were working for OBS on quality control. Yeah, so tell us about what you were doing there.
I was doing this for the first 10 days. I was at PQC, which is where I usually go during the Olympics. But it's basically production quality control, where all the producers watch all their live feeds coming in, and it's our sort of, as the name says, you control not only the quality of the picture, but actually, the graphics, the cutting patterns. Is the producer happy with how the director is actually realizing their vision of the sport? And it's sort of the first point of contact if something goes wrong. Yeah. So we have a direct talk back with the truck. And if the graphics go down, or the truck is on fire, or power goes down, or something happens, it's the first point of contact. So we're right there. And even though there is also the operations room at the OBS at IBC, it's sort of quality control is basically the place where everything happens.
Yes,
And we're there 24 hours a day, basically. So. Right. It's sort of the brains of the operation, if you want to call it that way.
Yeah. And so, do you enjoy that?
I do. Yeah. It's great because I think I can't remember who, but somebody said once that the quality control is where producers go to die. I don't know why, but it was somebody from OBS, I think, but. It's because we all go there, and we're the ones that have been doing it for so long that it's kind of, and we all know each other, so it's really nice, because it just feels like home and family. Yeah. And you spend so many days there and so much time that it just kind of, it's very relaxed. It's very closed off, so nobody really comes in there. And we just watch TV all day, basically.
With your mates, I like
With your mates, yeah.
And, talking of family, this was your first Olympics without your amazing dad, Manalo. So that must have been a bit tough for you.
It was very tough, actually. I didn't realize how tough it was until I actually moved out of the IBC to go to Versailles, because I was part of the crew at Modern Pentathlon. But it was... let me put it that way. I was happy to be in quality control because I could hide away and not have to see people. Because it was the first Olympics after he passed away, and just walking through the halls and people coming up and saying, condolences and stuff was quite difficult for me.
But legend, as are you. Cool. And then, so then after the Olympics, we had the Paralympics, which is just finished as well. And that was a bit of what we call a bun fest. So you did the opening and the closing ceremonies, and you were teed up to do the athletics, which is a huge job just in itself.
Yep.
And then at the last minute, you kind of got para-track cycling, equestrian, parachuting, para-archery, wheelchair rugby, and judo as well. Yep. So what happened there?
Well, I think it's because we're, the little brother of OBS, or little sister. But I think it was just more of because we work quite a lot with the Paralympic Committee anyway. Yeah. And at first we were going to do just parachuting because we'd done the shooting, and then para-athletics because that's sort of one of our specialties with the IPC. Yeah. And then I think it was a mix between Paris 2024 deciding to cover more Paralympics. So OBS didn't really have any more crews, and we were there and we said, okay. But we had done para-archery before several times. Same with wheelchair rugby. So I think it was just a natural sort of, we need help, and we were there, so... Yeah, but it was quite tough. Quite tough trying to find crews available that last minute.
How last minute was it?
Well, para archery was added maybe a month before. So
you we were already
about
packed and ready to go to Paris anyway.
In Paris.
All right. Okay.
I was already in Paris, and they asked if we can do para archery. Luckily, the guys were available, and they were like, "Yep, we're getting on a plane," but.
Yeah. Who
And
needs
then-
sleep anyway?
Exactly. Who needs sleep? But yeah, and then during the Paralympics, especially for athletics, there was a little bit of understaffing. So we had to try and find last-minute relief crew on all different levels. So that was kind of hard, but it was great because I managed to bring in some more girls
Fab.
to join the crew. So
Excellent.
yeah.
Yeah. And we haven't spoken actually since the end of the Paralympics. So how did it all actually go?
Apart from the para-athletics, which was truly hard, because it was the morning session and the evening session, and contrary to the Olympics, you know, there's not as much resources, cameras, so it was very tough on the crew, but they did an amazing job. I think they did, but then at the same time, the same crew had to also be involved in the rehearsals for the closing ceremony, which was also happening in the Stade de France. So it was quite challenging on the crew, and the closing ceremony team, let's say, forgot about the fact that there's sport going on. So it was all about the ceremony, and they wanted Greg Breckel, who was our integrated director, to go to all the overnight rehearsals. And it was like, no, I don't think that's going to happen.
He does need a nap sometime.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that was very challenging, but that happens usually with closing ceremonies,
Right.
where they don't really have enough time to adjust or rehearse. So it was kind of a blind
Wing it situation.
wing
Yeah.
it.
Great. And then just to sort of like summarise, you know, I mean, going back to the OBS, gender equality push for this Olympics and Paralympics, and what you normally do over ISB anyway, you know, it generally does take a nudge from the top to push services providers to make an effort in this area, and it's necessary as well, because otherwise people can just take the easy route, which is back to the old chaps that they always use, who are solid and reliable and do a good job, but where you need opportunities, you need to bring other people in. You know, how do you feel about, you know, companies in the industry taking a firmer stance on diversity and inclusion, you know, especially as a woman leading a company?
I think it's super important. You know, it's just like I said before. I think, and I don't mean it any particular way, but I think it's important for us women that we actually give the women the tools to be able to do those jobs properly, because it can also backfire if you just put women in because, and then they don't do a good job because that wasn't their specialty or they didn't have any experience. Mm-hmm. It can backfire because then they go, well, see, it's a woman. So I think it's kind of a fine balance between, you know, choosing the right person and also giving them the opportunity to train them and to give them enough time to be confident enough to take on that role. But hey, I'm sitting here. I was kind of thrown into it, and you know, just kind of go along and learn as you go. I think, you know, there's a lot of opportunities now to learn, to train, to study. But, you know, I went to film school because I didn't want to study, I just wanted to work. And my dad said, well, you have to study something. So I chose the next big thing, best thing, which was film at the time. But I just wanted to work, you know. I just loved it. The first time I got sent off to an event I was 16 years old, and I was a runner, and I just loved the whole thing. And of course I had my dad, who was always super supportive of everything, and he was the first one that always said, it doesn't matter what color, what sex you are, it's just if you're doing a good job and you're there, and you know, that's it. And I think that's, for me, that's the most important thing, that I've never personally had any issues with being a woman or not, because I think I just learned from him that as long as you do a good job and you stand up for yourself, that's it. But it is like, sorry, I forgot. Sure,
yes.
What he was just saying, that you sit around, you know, you watch people going in and out, and it's a sea of men, and then every once in a while you see a woman, and you kind of go, oh, there's one.
Yeah.
You know?
Hello.
So I think it's also changing quite a lot, and it's very rapidly changing, which is really good. I mean, I'm looking at all these wonderful ladies here, in big positions, and I think, you know, again, I think women in general are better in multitasking, for sure. We can handle stress, and I think we can handle, in general, situations where diplomacy and politically correctness is involved probably better. But I think, you know, you need to have a thick skin. And both the film industry and the broadcast industry, you need to have a thick skin anyway. So it's not just a physical thing or a mental thing. I think it's just being in broadcast, you need to be a special person anyway. So yeah.
Cool.
I don't know if that answered your question.
That does answer my question. Thank you. Let's have a round of applause first. But would anyone like to ask Ursula any questions? I can run around and deliver the mic. Any questions? Oh. Anybody? Oh, there's one.
I don't have a question, but since there are no questions, I just want to say thank you.
Oh, thank you. Cool. Okay, let's give Ursula a big round of applause. Thank you very much. Thank you.